Yes, Sri Krishna. So they started joining, and you can start.
Yeah. Thank you, Kriti. And a very warm welcome to all of you, and good afternoon for the 7th webinar in the series of webinar on Amrit Grand Challenge Gen Care, Reimagining Healthcare Delivery, Touching a Billion Lives. So as most of you know, this is a BIRAC initiative with partners like NASCOM, and IKP is the implementing partner. We have several other partners whom we'll come to in a minute. And today's specific theme is on solutions to enhance patient compliance. Next slide, please. Okay. So in this particular webinar, we would talk of challenges and gaps in relation to patient compliance. And we have stellar speaker cohort today with Dr. Ambuj introducing the AGC Gen Care, and we have Mr. Sumnesh Joshi, who is the Deputy Director General, UIDAI, Government of India. He would be giving us an overview of the AGC Gen Care. Then we have 3 clinical experts, clinicians, who would be giving their perspectives on the issues related to patient compliance. We have Dr. Manas Panigrahi, who is a neurosurgeon. We have Dr. Subhash Kaul, who is a neurophysician and a neurologist. We have Dr. Sai Praveen Harnath, who is a pulmonologist at Apollo Hospitals. We have Dr. Ananthakrishnan from BMGF, who would give us a public health perspective of issues related to patient compliance. And then we have a startup, Mr. Nakul Gupta, who represents Everwell Health Solutions. He would give us a startup perspective on issues related to patient compliance. So that is how this whole webinar of 90 minutes is designed. Now I would hand over the stage to Dr. Ambuj. Over to you, sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sri Krishna, and a warm welcome to everyone who has taken their time to join us on this webinar on a beautiful Friday afternoon. My name is Dr. Ambuj Chaturvedi, and as Dr. Sri Krishna pointed out, I'm part of the IKP team. I'm a senior vice president with IKP. I'm a clinician by background, and then decided to move on to the other side, to the corporate side about a decade back, and post my MBA, and had an extensive industry experience, both from a commercial as well as an R&D perspective, post which I then moved on to IKP to work actively and deep within the entire innovation ecosystem within the country, to have local as well as global influence. And I have the privilege today of introducing a bit about the AGC. So when we talk about Amrit Grand Challenge, this is primarily an initiative driven by BIRAC. IKP is an implementation partner along with the other partners that Dr. Sri Krishna pointed out. And the idea here is to look at reimagining healthcare delivery and touching a billion lives. And within this ambit, there is an overview of the program, which will be given by my next speaker. But just a bit about the webinar topic for today. So we're going to talk about solutions to enhance patient compliance. What does that mean? It means that within the AGC, within this grand challenge, we're looking at digital healthcare innovations, which can be classified into one or more of the following 6 segments. And the segments are access to primary healthcare, health data collection, predictive analysis, data privacy, solutions for improved community outreach, data-driven modeling, and solutions to enhance patient compliance. Now, within the ambit of this set, solutions to enhance patient compliance, you could look at, would-be innovators who are sitting on the other side right now and listening to us. You could look at solutions around patient tracking systems, or patient health record management, or patient enrollment systems, triaging systems, digital identity creation, health promotion, health education, patient compliance, home care, entitlement of patients. So there's a vast array of opportunities within the space of solutions to enhance patient compliance. And we thought, if we want to give a flavor to prospective innovators out there about what this entails, what kind of problem statements can you look at, we looked at 3 different perspectives. So we said, okay, first let's take a specialist, super specialist perspective, a clinical perspective, coming in So we have some of the stalwarts coming in from some of the finest corporate hospitals within the country, pulmonology, neurology, neurosurgery, and they're going to talk about. And and some of them I've had the privilege to know personally. So and I've interacted with them. So Dr. Manas, Dr. Sai, we've interacted a lot, and I know that they are not just clinicians, specialists, super specialists. They're also tech savvy. And so, how does a specialist clinician on the other side view what kind of solutions should be coming in within the ambit of technology enablers for delivering better healthcare? Then we said, okay, now let's complement this with a public health perspective, which is where, again, a very good friend, Dr. Anand Krishnan, is going to talk about his perspective, both from the industry and now working in perhaps the one of the largest organizations working within impact investing and funding. And we're going to get that perspective as well from him. And then we said, okay, now let's round it off by looking at practitioners. So that's where Nakul is going to come in. Brilliant work being done by his organization. And we've seen a lot of work done by them within patient compliance, specifically focused on the tuberculosis space. And so I think at the end of the entire session, we hope that you as participants will be able to get a better idea about what are the opportunity areas, what are the gaps, what are the opportunity areas, and where should you be focusing your brilliant minds in terms of solving problems that ail the Indian healthcare system. Just a quick one, if there are any questions, we did receive about 7 to 8 questions during the registration itself. But if you have any questions while the experts are discussing the topic, you can feel free to put that into the chat box, and we should be happy to address them. With this, I now have the privilege to invite Mr. Somnesh Joshi. He's a Deputy Director General at UIDAI. An engineer, an electrical, electronics, and communications engineer, who then took a different path and went into to attain a degree in public policy from UC Berkeley, and then decided to come back to India and work extensively in senior positions with PSUs like PSNL, and then moved into the Government of India initiatives with the DOT, Department of Telecommunications, and is currently serving the UIDAI and continuing his yeoman service to the country. Thank you so much, Mr. Somnesh Joshi. Over to you.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Ambuj. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So as just briefly touched by Dr. Ambuj, that in the Amrit Grant, Master Grant Challenge, the Jan Care. So basically, already 6 segments that Dr. Ambuj has explained and elaborated. And now in here, this is, we have to find out some innovative solutions. So all you are here who are going to innovate, and you have already been innovating, and maybe you think something out of the box with respect to the patient compliance. And as maybe experts will talk more in detail about the patient compliance, but from the technical perspective, when you are going to give the solution, we have to basically use the technology in the health sector. And of course, we are making so many applications, and we are going ahead with the use of the technology in the health sector. So, but here, the key thing is that I would like to highlight, when you make an innovation, we have to think the last mile, that is the patient in our mind, that put yourself as a patient, and then the application should work, right? So it starts from the hunting of the doctor or the hospital, and then compliance with respect to many parameters, maybe with respect to regular follow-ups are happening or not, and maybe what are the tests a clinician is writing, that is happening or not, and even with respect to diet also, typically diabetes patient, and we have a substantial percent people the diabetes, maybe the type 1 or type 2, important role, a part of the company. Difficult. So how we can issues in the health sector, and then whether the person is doing regular exercise or not. Maybe it's not the medication, but the exercise also is a part of it. And of course, the medication and the vaccination right from the child now, and everyone has seen the COVID app, right? The COVID vaccination using this COVID app, and we have ensured that compliance in the first dose and second dose, now the booster dose, brilliantly the use of that single app. And then maybe the issue with respect to the prescriptions, when whenever a clinician or doctor is writing or giving a prescription, maybe they are writing some medication on a piece of the paper, but so many things they are explaining to the some doctors write in detail, but some doctors may not because of the paucity of time, but they explain everything. So but even as a literate person, we also follow what doctor has said, what to comply. So it's not that someone is going to deliberately, not comply with what doctors have forgotten. So we have to think that what technological innovation we can do, that maybe what type of services we can have, so we can ensure plug these type of gaps. Now, of course, you are going to use because so much of the data is available in the field. So, of course, the artificial intelligence and big data analysis and robotics and Internet of Things, where so many things will come through the sensor. So, finally, app should work on the cloud-based service, and maybe a mobile application or maybe the assisted mode application. So basically, we require the integration of all the stakeholders. Ideally, that maybe it's a doctor, a clinician, hospital, maybe the pharmacy or the lab or diagnostic centers, even the support staff or the patient. When everything is integrated, so maybe we can ensure the compliance, and everyone can see everyone that okay, this whether the pharmacy is not maybe doing the role properly, or maybe something is not clear at the doctor level, or the patient is not complying. So if we have a system, technical system in place, the integration, and of course, whenever whatever you are thinking and whatever you are going to design that innovation, so it's very simple to say that yes, just integrate it, but it's not only the technical thing. We have to keep in mind the other aspects also. There are many challenges that you have to see when you design an innovation. So because as I initially said, that we have to keep the last person in mind. And who is the last person? That the patient. And the patient may be literate or illiterate, maybe rich, poor, or maybe in a metro city, or maybe in the travel area like Gadchiroli in the Maharashtra district, or very remote village. So many things, and the kind of language, because everyone is not well versed with the English. So if you want to reach at the remotest area, so we have to think that how we can incorporate the language that is being used in that particular remote area, the local vernacular language, and level of understanding. Sometimes this level of understanding I can define. It's not related to the academics thing, but something maybe one can define from the other perspective, that some person is able to understand easily and some person is not able to understand the thing. So all these things, and then finally the connectivity also. So all these things, should we give the offline solution sometimes, or always a real-time solution? So income level, etc. So all these things we have to factor in when we design the solution. See, the moment we say technical solution, so as a layman, something clicks in our mind, or it's something will run on the internet or the cloud or the mobile app. But mind it, app will work on the smartphone, and 20% of the mobile connection are on the smartphone, and then many of the patients or maybe the residents are having the feature phone only, and maybe the 30% of residents are not having phone itself. So how we can serve using the technological solution? Maybe we can incorporate assisted mode. Then if it is assisted mode, then we have to factor in what kind of security, what kind of privacy, because if it is assisted mode, that of course the last person is giving his or her data. So we have to ensure all these things in a technical fashion. So, and then when we implement any solution, so we have to keep in mind that the training aspect also, so that comes in my mind that the service triangle, maybe many of you are aware that one is the organization, one is the, the patient, and someone who is giving the training, etc. So we have to ensure that, yes, what we are going to deliver, it should reach to the last mile, and the person who are delivering the services should be well versed. So after incorporating all these things, what you need, because the one example that I've given, the CoWIN application, so you require basically to ensure that he's the same person. For example, in the TB, the DOT center, so you have to ensure that, yes, that person has to visit a frequency to that particular dispensary for receiving the dose. And if that person is not coming, after say 1 month in the stipulated time period, maybe some trigger should come, or maybe one has to ensure that the same person is coming to receive the dot. So we have to ensure the identity of the patient each time and everywhere. So every stakeholder is interested that, yes, he's the same person. So in the entire perspective or any health solution, the key point is the digital identity of that patient. Very important, because time and again, to ensure the privacy of that person, maybe data is there on the cloud, and doctor is having the access, or support staff is having the access, but that person can't see the data unless until the consent is there from that patient, and the patient can give the consent through a digital identity, that is, yes, I am such and such person and I am fetching my data, now you can have a look. So this Aadhaar is providing the digital identity in the form of the Aadhaar number, which is verifiable online or maybe now offline. And online, of course, one can verify the Aadhaar, maybe give Aadhaar number and one of the biometric attribute, or maybe using the OTP or the electronic KYC, the entire patient data is coming, name, address, gender, etc. And then maybe further detail you can capture with respect to the application. And then you can see the authentication also. Maybe sometimes we doesn't require the full data. We simply want to ensure that he is the same person. So for example, in government sector or in the private sector, we have the attendance system. So the same person is coming for the attendance. So that person is giving the biometric, right? So the authentication can take place through the OTP or maybe the demo auth or the bio auth. So all these things are API driven. So you can factor in this because this identity we have to integrate with any health innovation, because we have to ensure, and typical for this segment, that is to ensure the compliance. And you can ensure the compliance only when you can verify the person and you can track the person, right? So this Aadhaar, you have to think, and maybe you can take more detail from the UIDAI website, how one can use the online verification API, how one can use the offline Aadhaar, that is digitally signed XML file that is available on the website, or maybe the digitally signed QR code, because all the new Aadhaar that UIDAI is issuing, and if you can order the new PVC card or the e-Aadhaar, you can download, so that have the QR code which is digitally signed, and one can scan it and immediately get the data. So that QR code can act as a reference number throughout the journey of the patient. So many things that, of course, the experts will further elaborate in detail, which are the areas where we require more compliance. Maybe, when you do the big data analysis and you do some district survey, you can find out which are the major pain areas where we can initially fill the gap. So the idea is that finally, in a nutshell, whatever innovation, whatever solution that you are going to give us, that you have to issue the one, ensure the security aspect, one is the privacy aspect, and you can think that the national the health authority has come up with the concept of the family ID also, so that also you can think to integrate, and the DigiLocker where so many things are available for identification, that also you can think, and the Aadhaar as a digital identity platform. And lastly, I simply say there are 3C, that is the system should be very clean, right? It should be not a complex system. So the last mile one can use easily and understand the system, and it should be the second C, the cost effective, and the third is the convenience. And convenience is the most important factor. So people will be happy, and we can ensure the compliance at a different segment. So with this, I end my discussion. Maybe now experts can throw more light on the gaps that they are facing in day-to-day life with respect to the patient.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And question, I'm free to ask. Yeah.
No, actually, I had a
please,
couple, but in the interest of time, I won't ask right now. But all I can say is before Dr. Sri Krishna jumps in.
Yeah, we can offline maybe discuss. Yeah,
we can do that. Yeah. So before Dr. Sri Krishna introduces the list of speakers, I just wanted to put a quick set of operational details for the AGC program, which is that the 75 years of independence. So there will be 75 startups selected. 60 startups will be at the seed stage. They will be provided a grant funding based support. 12 startups, 12 to 13 will be in the validation stage. Here there will be a 20 lakh support. This will be an equity funding based support. This will also be topped up, but right now it is 20 lakh equity based, and 2 to 3 would be in the commercial space, and there a 50 lakh equity based funding support will be given. The timelines are going to be, you have 31st March till 31st March to put in your applications, and that's it. So just putting in some operational details. With this, I now pass on the call to you. Over to you, Dr. Sri Krishna.
Thank you, Dr. Amrit, for that. Now I would like to invite Dr. Manas Panigrahi. He would discuss about some of the compliance issues, patient compliance issues that he would have seen in his vast years of experience as a neurosurgeon. To briefly introduce Dr. Panigrahi, he is a neurosurgeon. He has a MS General Surgery and an MCH in neurosurgery from NIMANS. Has more than 27 years of clinical experience. He's also into academic teaching. He was the former HOD and HOD of neurosurgery at Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences. And currently he's the HOD of neurosurgery at the KIMS, or the Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences. He has several publications in international and national journals of repute, and he has several awards and accolades in his name. Over to you, sir, please.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible. You may kindly make it full screen, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Now it's full screen, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sri Krishna and Mr. Ranjit, for inviting us to tell us our experience in managing patients. After listening to Dr. Joshi of the technical terms of making an app, it looks like brain surgery is easier than making an app. With so much of security and all those which is involved, brain surgery is easier. But then it is the center of point is here patients, where patients do not understand. As he was mentioning, that many times when we listen, it is difficult to remember everything. When a patient comes to us, in that 5 minutes, though we explain everything, but for a particular patient, he probably will retain 25% of what we tell, or maybe 50, if it is very good, 50%. And so that is why we need a repetition, or either online or offline information, so that can be repeated. There are 4 more speakers. Dr. Kaul is there, and we have pulmonologists to speak on the issues of medical treatments, of the compliance on medicines, like if you have chronic medicines of hypertension or diabetes, or epilepsy or a stroke patient where you need blood thinners. They have to take for lifelong. But as a surgeon, I'll be speaking on the problem we face in surgery patients or patients who are operated, especially for cancer. It's a general rule. A patient who is means operated for a cancer anywhere in the body, they also has to be compliant or come for regular follow-up to have the best effect of treatment. The best survival of a patient depends on if he takes the treatment not only for the primary disease when he was detected, but also when the treatment when it regrows. Because as all of you know, cancer means it has to regrow. It's not that one step solution operated and everything is over. So in a tumor, in addition to following up for a recurrence, one has to continue with chemotherapy, which needs lot of compliance from the patient. It's not patient, it's the relatives or the family of the patient. The recurrence rate differs in what kind of tumor. Means all tumors, for a layman, you can divide into 4 grades, where grade 1 is the best, and grade 4 is the worst, and grade 4 can regrow in 3 months time. So whereas grade 1 can regrow in 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. So the compliance of a grade 4 patient has to be very higher of the not patient, the family, than the patient, because most of the time when somebody is detected cancer anywhere in the body, they lose interest in life. So compliance has to come from the family rather than from the patient. So here we have to target the family and the friends, then the patient herself or himself. And all the brain tumor patients, as a surgeon, they have a tendency to have fits also. So not only we have to follow up with the patient looking for regrow, but also that we have to give medications to prevent fits. And if they are not compliant, they are admitted with fits multiple times in the hospital. That not only adds cost of treatment, but also has a problem with the outcome of the patient. Every time he gets admitted, he becomes unconscious, he has a problem with his long-term outcome. Hence, so what do you expect whenever we operate a patient for any brain cancer? In the acute phase, in the first 2 weeks, it is excessive medication. In the long term, people miss the medication, but in the acute phase, they do excessive. Suppose somebody is having pain, they sometimes use excessive pain medication in the first 2 weeks. So in here, one needs a compliance that they are prevented, or they're counseled, or they're repeatedly reminded that you should not take the pain medication more than a certain amount of time, because that can cause side effect in the acute phase. But after 2 weeks, when it comes to the chronic phase, they need to take regular of anti-epileptic medication, which I'll not speak much, because all of my speakers consecutively will speaking mostly on compliance of medication. But then what as a surgeon we need to detect regular regrowth. The regrowth can be detected by doing a regular CT scan or MRI scan or a PET scan, but the interval is decided depending on what grade of tumor it is. So the planning of how often a patient has to be reminded that he has to come to detect a regrowth depends on it is a grade 1 tumor, grade 2, or grade 3, or grade 4. Now, what is the burden of non-compliance? It is a huge burden, because 90% of elderly patients, they make lot medication errors, and 35% of elderly patients make potentially serious medication errors that they may not take, like they may not take epilepsy medicine leading to seizures and becoming unconscious at home, or sometimes they may take over medication and then land up in the hospital again because of medication overdose. And 75% of the chronic care patients do either stop their medication at some point, especially it is nothing related to age, but 75% don't like, they lose interest in taking medication every day. And only 75% who understand and agree with the treatment are compliant. So what it means is that people who understand the disease and feel that the treatment is effective for them, they only take medication. The rest of them, so 90% of them, and this group is only 10%. 90% of them do not understand the disease, and they do not, many times they don't feel that whatever medication they're taking is effective for them. So we have to have a lot of information given to the patient that what is the kind of disease they are suffering and what is the effect of medication on them. Now, if they are non-compliant, it not only causes treatment failure, so the disease will progress. And if the disease progresses, then they have to have frequently come to the hospital. It increases more hospitalization, and the death comes earlier. And increased hospitalization not only increases the cost of treatment for the family, but also to the government hospitals also. So a huge amount of expense can be reduced if a patient is compliant, because 11% of hospital admission are due to non-compliant issues. And this was a paper long back in 2005 when they found out what are the reasons the patient doesn't take. And the most important is they forgot to take. And half of them said the symptom disappeared, so I stopped medicine. So if the symptom disappears, stop medicine, then again it has to come back. And some of them wanted to save money, so didn't want to have money. And some of them felt that drug was ineffective. And the other issues are they could not afford. And some of them told that there was no reminder. And some of them said that they did not get the medicines. So when we look at making an app, one has to look at all this. It's not an app for that to remind that you take the medicine, but if somebody has a problem in getting it refill, this app should also suggest that where they can get it then at the nearest place. Or if they don't have the money to buy, the app also should suggest which are the NGOs or where are the organizations where they can get drugs, medications at a cheaper cost or free of cost. So all those information probably should be interlinked so that patient compliance can be increased. Now there are different compliance aids like what is available in the market is making Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all these packs are available. People make a phone reminder in the phone, but what one has to understand is that if I have disease, I have to remind myself that I have to take medication. Then I do not feel that I should take medication to live. So if the reminder comes from a friend or from a family member, then the patient who is suffering has a feeling that people care about my life and people that I should live. So then they are more compliant. So whenever we're making an app, it should not be an automated drill that is 8 a.m. Please take your medication. If the voice comes from one of the family member, then they feel more happy. So the recorded voice should come. If the app has a facility where the recorded voice can be done from one of the family member, I feel that it helps better compliance. Now, early detection of regrowth is as important as early detection of disease. So, as I told, if somebody is suffering from cancer in anywhere in the body, be it brain or liver or somewhere, it is most important has to have detection, and the early detection can be done by regular follow-up or regular investigation. As I told, cost is one of the major issue. So apps also should have information where is the cost, and psychological. As I told you, it cannot be customized. A nurse reminding to take a medicine and a family member reminding to take a medicine makes a lot of difference. And patient has to be convinced that whatever he's taking is helpful for them. There should be parameters where patient himself, most of the time patient comes to the OP, we tell them you are fine, you are doing well, but the patient does not perceive that he is doing well. So there should be parameters where patient perceives that he is doing well. Like recently, I saw a product called Physi, where for a physiotherapy, 1% increase in muscle power also is detected. Sir, if the patient himself can detect that there is a 2% increase of a muscle power by physiotherapy, then he gets a more enthusiasm to come for the next day. But if he doesn't have an objective way of assessment, only subjectively the physiotherapist or the doctor tells that you are better, he may not come next day. So you should have a lot of equipments or apps where it actually measures from patient point of view rather than from a doctor point of view. So how it can help? One is to set up reminders for medications, both in acute and chronic disease, as I said. It should be personalized, done by family members, not by the automated voice of in the telephone. And set up reminders for repeat testing, like insurance policy. Insurance policy have a better compliance than medication, because they just don't leave us till we pay the insurance. So similarly, easy accessibility for investigations, like in multiple modes of payment insurance policy. In insurance policy, you have a debit card, you have credit card, you have pay, you can do Google Pay, you can pay cash. So like that, investigations also should be easily available, especially to have compliant. Many times in brain tumor patient, and especially during COVID time, patient did not come for follow-up. We after 2 years, we saw patients who came twice the size of the primary tumor which we had operated, because they did not do investigation. Because of COVID, all our places were closed for investigation. So we saw huge tumors coming after COVID with regrowth. I'm not telling the primary disease. So with these few words, thank you for your attention, and I'll request Dr. Kaul to tell about the medication part in neuroscience.
So thank you very much for that. Before Dr. Kaul takes over, I know that you might be leaving soon, sir. So there were 1 or 2 questions from the audience who were registered earlier. So yeah, so one of the, and sir, thank you very much for nicely summarizing the importance of relatives also, and not just the patient, and also highlighting some of the important areas of compliance in the surgical field. And you also highlighted FEESI, which is from Startoon Labs. It is one of our IKP award and funded BIG awardee grantees. So very happy to know that, sir. And the specific question to you is, in your experience, how receptive are patients to technological innovations? Over a period of time, you would have seen a lot of patients. So what is your experience in their reception for technology in healthcare?
Technology may sit, unfortunately, most of the disease, brain cancers are in the elderly, and they are not so technologically means they're illiterate, I can tell. So exactly. It's only yeah. So and then many of the most of our Indian population are rural, and they also do not have so much technically literate to, so that the apps can help. As Dr. Joshi was telling, we should have apps in local language, and then digital reminders is only app, like it is difficult for people to work with the app only. But some person should follow it up, and especially when it's not an insurance policy, it's a person. So it's a person, one has to look at the psychology of the person. It's a diseased person. You cannot expect a diseased person to sit with the app and work for himself. Somebody else should be doing, one of his family member has to do that. And I'm assuming and in especially in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, unfortunately, most of the family members, the sons and daughters, are in US. So they technologically they know everything, but they cannot help. So I'm sure that 10 years down the lane, even in rural population, everybody can do it. But it is feasible. It's the right time to start off.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for those insights. And you very rightly pointed out some of the very key features of technologies and how they should be. It should be simplistic, it should be accessible, also affordable. I'm sure the prospective applicants who are present here would make a note of that. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your time. I would now request Dr. Subhash Kaul. He is a neurologist and a neurophysician. Yeah, his slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So he's a renowned neurologist and neurophysician with more than 4 decades of clinical experience. He has a DM in neurology from PGIMER Chandigarh. He has a stroke fellowship from NIH Maryland, USA. Again, he also has a clinical experience and academic teaching. So he works in a medical college. So he was former professor and head of the Department of Neurology at Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences, wherein he also headed as a dean at that institute. And then currently he's associated with the Krishna Institute of Medical Science, or the KIMS. And he is, along with his clinical responsibilities, he also heads the CSR wing at KIMS Hyderabad. He has, again, several publications in international and national journals. Over to you, sir, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can I be allowed to share my screen?
I think you should be able to share your screen, sir.
Yes. So the customary, am I audible, am I visible, right?
Yes, sir, very much.
Thank you so much. That's our new language. Am I audible, am I visible? Thanks once again for giving me this opportunity. Mr. A, who is a diabetic, these are real scenarios. They are I know them personally. Mr. A, diabetes at 20, blood pressure at 30, high blood pressure at 30, is fit and functional at 62, which is my age, because he's my class fellow. But Mr. B, diabetes at 20, dialysis at 30, amputation at 40, and death at 50. Same disease, different scenarios. What's the difference? Difference is the compliance. Half the patients don't follow the lifestyle advised by their doctor, and half the patients don't take the medicines as prescribed by their doctor. Half. And this data is not Indian data. This is a worldwide data. Now, intentional causes of non-compliance is that the patients don't believe. They don't believe what the doctor is telling is true. They come to a doctor for a customary thing. And now this is not all. It's maybe 20%, 30%. They come, but they don't believe. They are unable to change their lifestyle. They are unable to, get up early in the morning. They are unable to jog. They are unable to stop smoking. They are in love with their lifestyle and they don't want to change it. That's it. Sometimes some of them have side effects of medicines, which are inconvenient, right? Sometimes embarrassing side effects, which they don't even share with their doctor. And for a huge population, cost of medicine acts as a barrier. Medicines are extremely costly. I, as a doctor, also did not know till I one day had to buy it for myself. And I realized just the antibiotics sometimes cost so huge, which are day-to-day medicine. Antihypertensive, can you believe an antihypertensive medicine can cost as much as 25 or 30 rupees per pill? So cost is also another issue. And sometimes the complex pill load, the difficult routine, one tablet in the morning, half in the afternoon, one in the evening, then again, combine it with 3 more other. So the complexity of pills and the pill load, sometimes the patient wonders, has he to take pills after dinner or has he to take pills for dinner? There's so much. I know people who have to take 20 medicines, 30 medicines, and it's common. It's common. And then inconvenience to the patients. Just to remembering itself is an inconvenience. So these are the reasons why a patient is non-compliant. And there's another reason in our country is there's a cultural preference for certain systems of medicine. Many times the patient will come to me, I will write a prescription, and then one of his relatives will tell him, this is all nonsense, I'll give you a homeopathic medicine. And then he stays on those homeopathic medicines for quite some time, right? Till he gets a recurrence again, and again he comes back to me. Ayurveda, homeopathy, this thing, that thing, those are cultural issues. And that's a different topic. So these are the reasons why patients are intentionally, they know that they are not complying. They know it. And these are the reasons. Now, on the other hand, we have got unintentional causes, where our patient wants to be compliant, but then somehow he's not compliant when he wants. So what are those? What are those which happen unintentionally? Well, one is procrastination. This is a common psychology thing. Okay, I have to walk. I'll walk from next week. Oh, I'm sure I will stop smoking, but I'll do it. I had one patient, a stroke patient. He came to me and I told him that, look, you have to stop smoking, because he was smelling of cigarettes as he entered my clinic. He was smelling, the smoke was coming out of his body. He ignored my advice to stop smoking. And I told him again, sir, Mr. Rao, you have to stop smoking. He again ignored my advice. He diverted me to some other topic. And finally, he realized that while leaving, he said, Dr. Cole, I promise you, I will definitely stop smoking when the opportunity comes. So, they just want to delay. Then some have a genuine forgetfulness. They forget that they have to take medicines. Some people have got a difficulty in identifying the proper medicine. At old age, at neurological disease age, visual disturbances are common. Some people have got arthritis. They have difficulty in opening the tablets, opening the bottle. And then, of course, dementia is a huge neurology problem. So these are another set of causes which are unintentional. So what can we do to improve compliance? I think the treating team has to build trust in patient. This includes doctor, his assistant, nurse, and others. If they trust the team, then they will listen to team. And adherence and compliance improves if the patient wants to adhere, if the family, as Dr. Manas nicely said, it's not just the patient, it's patients and his family. The family, his daughter, even if his daughter is in US, she can phone him and repeatedly check whether he's taking the medicine or not. But this is the core. Adherence will not improve with any amount of technological innovations, any amount of apps, until the family and the patient want to. That is the core where we have to put more maximum effort. And behavior and responsibility of the treating team is important. Mindful listening to the patient's complaint, explaining the diagnosis to the patient and family, and explaining treatment plan to the patient and family. This is the fundamental core. Without this, no amount of technology can help the patient, because it is the patient who has to take the medicine. So the patient and the family have to know the value of adherence. We have to explain to them how the disease progresses. We have to explain to them how a simple hypertension today in 5 years can cause kidney failure, can cause heart attack, can cause stroke, can cause death. Those spectre we have to paint in front of him so that he knows that on the day his daughter is getting married, same day he can die or he can get paralysis. That kind of a thing we have to explain to him, and explain to him that how all that can be prevented if he is compliant with his medication. This has to be taught to him with the medical team. This is of extreme importance. Now, when we write the prescription, it should be simple and it should be legible. Most of the doctors' handwriting is very bad, so much so they can't even read their own prescription. So prescription should be legible. There should be once a day formulation as long as possible. People always prefer OD preparation rather than TID. And it should be customized to the lifestyle of the patient. Now, the patient who is working during the night time, his medicines have to be customized that he can take them at the appropriate time. And the drug choice has to be individualized according to the patient's comorbidities. These are small things, but they're extremely important to ensure, because these medicines have to be compliant, they have to be integrated into his lifestyle. First follow-up after we discharge the patient should be early. This should be a physical follow-up after 2 weeks. This I'm telling you based on my 40 years of experience. And we have to check with him. Is he okay with the pill size? Is he okay with the frequency? Is there any aftertaste of the medicine? Many things patients don't tell you. Is there any edema of feet? Does he feel generally weak or dizzy? Is he allergic? Does it make him very drowsy? Because without telling the doctor, the patient will stop taking the medicines and become non-compliant. Of course, after the second follow-up or the first follow-up, subsequent follow-ups can be app-based and phone-based. That is where the technology comes. But technology will not replace the doctor or the caregiver. It's a bridge between the patient and the doctor. So now you know these medical apps, basically, they can have alarms to take the medicine, or they can be voice-based like Alexa, and as Manas said, maybe through his own daughter's voice or son's voice. And it also records the response of the patient. But you know, smartphones are not accessible to everybody in this country as of now. I think we also need to have phone-based options, non-app-based options, just reminders through the normal phones, normal small phones also, rather than smartphones. But it should not stop us from doing smartphone technology, because what I have realized that even though our patients are illiterate, his grandson knows how to do it. And grandsons remain in the family for some time. Any problem in the home, give it to Nittu, give it to Kittu. Kittu will know everything. Even the maid servants know everything these days. Maid servants' children know everything these days. So that we don't have to bother about that part. Somebody in the family will know that. But at the same time, to reach the last person, maybe non-app-based phone options also should be exploited. Now, you're all technological people. You know that there can be smart pill bottles where the sensors detect when the bottle is opened. But that is all it can detect. It will not tell whether the patient has swallowed the medicines or not, right? Similarly, there are now smart package systems. These are mainly for multiple medications when patient has to take 10 types of medicines. So these package systems also provide tracking of the dispensed doses and provide reminders to the patient. There are smart pill dispensers these days which have home voice assistants And they have access to healthcare professionals and other activation features. And I think you people know about it, and there's a lot of literature on this. Now, the most exciting of it, which I read, I've never seen one, but this is an FDA approved one. It's called Bio-Ingestible Sensors. These devices are embedded onto an oral drug that, when dissolved, alert to patient's smartphone and to physician via a wearable patch indicating that the patient has taken the medicine. The first drug was the Bio-Ingestible Sensor by Abilify MyK. It was approved by FDA. I think these are important innovations, and probably this is something which one of you or some of you may pursue. So what I think after reading this literature and from my own experience is that the mobile app should not be simply to remind the patient. It should be, it should have a lot of functions. It should have drop-down menu, which we are so used to it, and so that patient, from time to time, patient should have to fill these questionnaires. Like, does the patient follow the lifestyle-related advice? Yes, no, something like that, and go to the next, and go to the next. These may not have to be done every time the patient opens it, but once a week or once in 2 weeks. And we, as doctors, we feel it all the time from pharma companies when they do surveys and all. Something on that model, we can have these questionnaires. These can be the questions on through drop-down phenomena. Does the patient follow his lifestyle-related advice? Does the patient understand the value of medicine? Like, do you believe that this BP medicine will prolong your life? And this can be even in the vernacular language also. Is the patient taking his medicines regularly? If not, then what are the challenges in achieving compliance? And are these medicines even achieving the desired goal? Is his BP controlled? Is his sugar controlled? Is his weight controlled? So therefore, I think the ultimate aim of the technology is to monitor, to remind, to assess, and then to compare with the goal which the patient has set, and to know whether the goal has been met or not. We also have to educate our patients through these simple things which are very common in our urban places, even semi-urban towns. Weight machine, almost everybody has it these days. We have to create more awareness. Blood pressure self-monitoring is the best monitoring, better than the doctors. We have to popularize it. And of course, main laboratory how to test in home is the blood sugar, which can be easily done. This is very much doable and very much prevalent in districts and towns, so that with this, the patient can give a follow-up technologically. So in summary, patient adherence or compliance is crucial to achieve good outcome. And doctor-patient communication is essential. It's the most essential thing for adherence or compliance. But apps can help to remind the patient to take medicine on time and regularly. Apps can educate, apps can assess and monitor the patient's progress with his medications. But we also should be aware of the non-app phone options, at least for a few years, because a lot of population manage with small phones. That also will, because they will have wider reach. But most important thing we have to say, that technology can supplement, but it can never replace the human touch, which has to be at the core of the matter. Thank you very much. I am done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for that eloquent detailing the importance of the compliance issues at different levels, different age groups, and also how to, you've already mentioned some of the examples wherein how to ensure that our immediate family members could help in improving the compliance. So thank you very much for that, sir. Sir, I'll keep the questions. There are certain questions for you already, so I'll keep them to the end.
Sure.
And also I am changing the schedule a little bit. Dr. Ananthakrishnan was supposed to talk after Dr. Sai Praveen, so I'm bringing him in right away because he has some other urgent appointment. So over to Dr. Ananthakrishnan.
So one more thing, excuse me, Sri Krishna, I have to leave at 5, but up to 5 I am here. But yes, at 5 I'm leaving. Just to keep you informed, so that.
Thank you.
Mr. Manas, this is Sumresh Joshi. Actually, I just want to interrupt. So maybe any question that are coming, so maybe you can just take a note and maybe you can share with me on the email, and then we will reply according to all the participants, right?
Sure.
So thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
We'll do it, sir. We'll do it. Thank you so much, sir. So if I can have the slide for Dr. Ananthakrishnan, yeah. So Dr. Ananthakrishnan is a senior program officer with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So he would talk about the public health perspectives on issues around patient compliance. So he is a health professional with more than 14 years of experience across pharmaceuticals, consulting, medical devices, and public health across various geographies, both Asia and otherwise. So he has proven expertise in new product planning and introduction in neurosciences, oncology, family health, and medical devices. He has an MBBS from the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences and an MTech in medical biotechnology from IIT Madras. Over to you, Dr. Anand.
Sure. I hope I'm audible. Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks
you are
so
audible,
much.
and you are.
And
We will share your screen, your
sure.
presentation,
Thank you.
and you can talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, there's a bit of a noise, but excuse me for that. Before I get started, thanks so much to the IKP team, Dr. Ambuj and Dr. Sri Krishna. And thanks especially Dr. Sai Parveen for accommodating me prior to this. My apologies that I had to jump into your session. Thank you so much for accommodating. Both Mr. Sumesh, Dr. Manas, Dr. All of them have kind of set the, Dr. Subhash as well has kind of set the context that is already there. So my talk would be very brief, and I'll re-pivot a couple of things on the public health perspective. The first of which, right, 3 critical data points, some of which have been covered. The first of which is that the drop in terms of the patient compliance, patient adherence is significant. And some studies quote up to half of the patients, almost 60% of the patients do drop off in the first year of their medication, which is very significant and also an opportunity for some of the innovators to intervene. The second piece, which is very critical from the public health perspective, we have data which is fairly dispersed, but I'll focus on this one data point from the US. Close to $3 billion, almost 125,000 lives are lost annually, predominantly from the non-adherence, and the experts prior before me spoke very eloquently on the issues behind it. The last piece, which is again very critical, is almost 10% of hospitalization in older patients can be avoidable if the medication adherence can be improved. So I would request the audience to consider these 3 critical data points. And if you could go to the next slide, please. And again, this would be a quick recap of what has been discussed. There are a bunch of factors that are very critical from the patient compliance and the patient adherence piece. There are patient-related factors, there are socio-economic factors, there are condition-related factors, there are therapy-related factors, and the health system and healthcare system and healthcare team-related factors. What I want to turn the group's attention is, if you go to the next slide, if you could change over to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this lays out the whole piece that was spoken in the last slide. But if you look at it, the condition related and drug related is very specific to the therapeutic condition which the physicians, the patients, their relatives, or their family members deal with. There are socio-economic, patient related, and health system related, which are broad based. And the innovators who are probably listening to this, they need to divide it into 2 parts. There is a condition related and a drug related aspect, which is very specific for a disease condition. The speaker after me would be talking a bit on the tuberculosis. So there will be certain nuances which are very peculiar to the disease condition, to the patient condition, to the drugs condition. There are drugs which you need to take almost 4 times a day. There are drugs which just has to be once in 3 months. There are drugs which need 6 different cycles. There are drugs which needs to be properly titrated and taken. So there are nuances which is very contextual on the condition, the disease. But when you overlay it on the socioeconomic, patient-related, and the health system-related things, there is a need to bridge the gap in this. So innovations which are of high public health importance would be innovations which can reflect the condition and the drug, but also have a socioeconomic wide and a health system connected pieces. So there are certain more nuances. I'll not typically get into it, except that I'll point out to 2 things. That one of the largest funder of patient adherence are the payers. In this regard, it's the insurance. So anything that appeals to the insurance will have a lot of credence. The ones which also are very connected to the behavioral patient factors will have high level of uptake from the patient side. The ones and the expert physicians who spoke before me, clearly which can reduce the physician switches, which can increase the patient tenure and adherence to drugs will have a lot of uptake. So net, a combination of condition to the socioeconomic and the health system related would be an apt innovation. The premise could be different. It could be digital, part digital, a bit of having an omni-channel approach, but that's completely an innovator call. At the end of it, if you can go to the last slide, please. Right, and this is my last slide. Plenty of opportunities in the patient adherence segment. The first of opportunities are in the patient pathway itself. A patient pathway has many steps. It starts from the awareness to access to finding to the treatment adherence to the end of it as continuation of it. There are plenty of opportunities in the patient pathway. The most critical one is the patient activation. Any application, any innovation which talks to the patient activation, which empowers it, will be seen as very valuable from the public health space. The second one, which is the care pathway opportunities. Again, Mr. Sumnesh did indicate about the large big data pieces. Data-driven, algorithm-enabled which can alter the care pathway, will have plenty of opportunities, something that the group can look at. Of course, the dichotomy between chronic and episodic care, the chronic definitely has more patient compliance issues. So I would definitely request them to focus on the chronic pieces. Between oral, topical, and injectable pieces, interestingly, the injectable patient adherence is far better than the oral. The topical is the most least. So any of the innovation which also takes into some of the medication-specific opportunities, which is oral and topical, would be very helpful. And of course, I did speak about the payer-specific opportunities. There is a definitive drive towards population-based payer. So large-based, big data-oriented, integrated into the health systems and the health information systems would be very valuable. That's it. So look forward, and all the very best to the innovators who will be looking at this and participating. Thank you so much. Happy to take if there are any questions, or I could also answer it over an email. Back to you, Dr. Sri Krishna.
Thank you, Dr. Anand, for that. You've very clearly highlighted. I think all the speakers, all the earlier speakers and yourself have definitely highlighted the point that elderly patients is one particular area wherein the innovators could focus their energies and thoughts on. That's number one. And also, I think all of you have brought in the importance of insurance also. So those are two things that I can point out for the applicants as key areas that they need to look at. One specific question for you, Dr. Anand, before you leave, from one of the registered participants is, what are some of the challenges that you see in implementation of some of these technologies in a public health perspective? Because it has to be population-based and has to be on a large scale. So what are some of the challenges that you foresee? That is a specific question for you.
So thanks for that. I think I would pick up what Mr. Sumnesh did indicate at the start of the session, right? One of the critical aspects that the innovators do tend to neglect is the data privacy, the data transferability pieces. And that's something is one of the cornerstone for any digital enabled systems. We are getting into an era where consent, patient privacy is very critical. So that's something that I would definitely want them to think through. The second aspect, which is very peculiar from the public health perspective, is there are plethora of interventions that are coming up, but the art and the skill is to tie them up in an omni-channel approach. And that's true. And the simple analogy is there are plenty of apps in the phone, and we are now in an era where our number of apps in the phone is reducing. So my request would be is to tie it up within what the existing ecosystem is, and then scale it up, which is typically an omni-channel approach. So two critical considerations which will definitely set them up for a large scale up in the public health programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. In that context itself, there was one specific question for Mr. Sumnesh Joshi. So I would probably take it up now. The question, sir, for you is a unique health ID for each individual coming up in the near future? Your thoughts on that, sir? That was a question from one of the registered participants.
Yeah, see, maybe I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are, sir.
Okay. So it's a, this unique health ID as such, maybe those who are registering on the Kavinav, etc., and the National Digital Mission. So they are giving some reference ID, that is unique health ID USD. They have started giving. Maybe sometimes people are telling that I have not asked for it by your consent, it's a breach of privacy, but the answer by the national authority is that they are giving something free. If you want to take it. Otherwise, it's just a reference number sort of thing. There's nothing inside. So that already maybe they can just to some research on that, or maybe if they want more, they can write to the national authority. They have started, so that concept has already come. So the idea is whenever they are making any application, as the current speaker has already pointed out the bill and nugget, that the privacy of the utmost concern. So whatever, because in the health sector, the technology is coming so late, because people are scared. See, even sometimes normal influenza or fever, etc. Okay, fine, you can have my data that okay, in the last 1 year how many times I have taken these pills. But with respect to the AIDS or any other some disease, people don't want that someone should be aware about that what type of disease I am having. So only the doctor that whom I trust. So the security, privacy, and the trust is the term that one has to look into. And these applications are, one has to think, from the privacy point of view more, and use this digital identity as the factor of authentication. This is the that I can tell all the innovators, because to my mind, now in the present system, if we have any health application, people-centric, that is individual-centric, so we want a key that is a digital identity. So one has to use either the national health ID, unique ID, USD, as given to the individual, or maybe Aadhaar number or some reference number. So this is my answer to them. So
thank you, sir.
If they want further detail, maybe they can write.
Absolutely, sir. No. Thank you very much. In fact, you have brought in. Yeah, you brought in the point of stigma also in specific diseases in terms of HIV, or it's.
Yes.
I'm sure it is there for leprosy. Some little part to TB also. Thank you very much for those.
Yeah, and just
insights,
I would
sir.
like to add for the just one line. I will just add because all our participants are working towards making the solution. I'll just draw an analogy, that is the account aggregator in the banking system. Even just like health parameters, an individual doesn't want to reveal its financial health also, that how much money the person is having, where he has invested, which bank account, how much money, etc. So as good as it's a very good parallel with the health system. So in the account aggregator means that with the consent driven mechanism, that person is giving the consent to different financial institutions to share the data amongst. So suppose someone wants a loan. So to know the credit history, he wants a loan, so he will just simply give the consent. Then only her data will be revealed to the different institutions, and then he can get the best offer. So similarly in the health system also, if we can have a aggregated system sort of thing, where I mentioned that all the stakeholders are integrated, and based on the consent driven system, one can say, I want to be diagnosed for something, so I'm allowing that my diagnostic center or there's a pathological center to share this detail with this particular doctor or the expert or maybe the abroad sort of thing. This is I'm giving the consent, so he can get the best treatment sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely, sir. So I think you very nicely explained in simple terms how a DigiLocker concept and how giving the consent by the individual, the patient, would help. I think that's the way to go, sir. Thank you very much for that. And without much delay, I would now introduce our next speaker, Dr. Sai Praveen Harnath. He would speak on his expertise on perspectives on patient compliance. He is an intensivist and a pulmonologist, currently working at Apollo Hospitals. He's a senior consultant physician in the Department of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine. He's also the medical director of Apollo E-Access, Tele-ICU, and Apollo LAM Clinic. He's on the editorial board of several international journals. He did his MBBS at MMC, or the Madras Medical College, and went on to do his medicine residency program from the University of Connecticut School of Medicine, from where he also has Masters of Public Health. Over to you, sir, please.
Hi, thank you, Sri Krishna. Just audio check. You can hear me okay?
Yes, sir, perfect.
Great. Thank you. So I'm just going to try to share my screen here. Again, thank you, Ambuj and Sri Krishna, for allowing me to participate. I have learned so much. It's pretty amazing. And thank you to you've also, for the first time I'm meeting Dr. Manas and Dr. Subhash Kaul. I've heard so much about them. I've never met them, but it was amazing just understanding their perspective. And pretty much most of the important points have already been covered. And I'm just going to kind of touch on a few areas so we have enough time for discussion. But the initial thought is that I had when I was kind of preparing for this was, what is it that prevents a patient from doing something that you want them to do? You're doing it from the best interest of the patient. You're telling them, based on your understanding of their medical situation, this is the treatment plan, this is what you should do. What I'm reminded of is toddlers and teenagers. Now, the mother has to kind of take care of them. Despite their refusal, sometimes you have to force food down. Despite their refusal and anger, you might sometimes have to not give them the car keys or the remote control. So is that an approach to compliance, or should we look at it very differently, where we have a mutual partnership between the patient and the doctor so that you actually take care of their medical situation in a way that is important to treat? Because you're clearly coming with a knowledge inequity. The patient doesn't understand the complete disease structure and what could happen if they didn't get treatment, whereas what can happen if someone doesn't get treatment. So there is this knowledge inequity, which may be one reason why patients don't get compliant, and all the list of other factors that were discussed by the previous speakers in an excellent way. Dr. Joshi's very down-to-earth and practical advice on building an app was very reassuring that people are really thinking about this from a perspective of the patient. And of course, Dr. Ananthakrishnan's perspective on the data that is really important to look at, because we do have a giant challenge in many diseases, especially if you take tuberculosis, about 50% non-compliance in a recent study. In addition, the major reason for multi-drug resistance, extended drug resistance in tuberculosis is because of patient non-compliance. Multiple technological interventions have been tried to kind of solve this problem. Now, if you look at the scope of the problem itself, it's not just simple pill taking. Look at the WHO's vaccine hesitancy. It's number 4 in the list of challenges for human health. Look at the NCD metrics: glucose control, hypertension, cholesterol. Each of these has a link to patient compliance. Look at trauma, people not wearing seat belts, people not wearing helmets. This is, exceedingly costly for human lives as well as health systems. Look at tobacco, number 1 killer on the planet. Alcohol, again, to do with compliance. If you really look at the National Institute of Alcohol in the US, if you look at their definition of alcoholism, you'll be surprised. It's very, very low. It's less than 5 to 7 drinks a week. Behavioral health issues, people not taking their medicines, especially people who have psychiatric illness and end up, killing themselves or killing others. So these are all just a big picture scope of the problem. And if you look at the literature, there's been almost 120,000 studies talking about patient compliance, if you just put those keywords from 1947 onwards till now. So it is clearly a very important topic that people are looking at. And if you look at the studies that have been done, this is very similar to what Dr. Ananthakrishan said. This is an article which looked at the factors that are involved in just medication adherence, and they did a meta-analysis / rather a systematic review, and they looked at patient factors, socioeconomic factors, health system factors, actual medicine factors, and also condition factors. So these are all just the different dimensions. And they say a startup or an entrepreneur is trying to fill a gap which exists. Now, these are the gaps which exist in compliance with medication, and you can fill these with innumerable technological solutions. Now, the big picture thing to remember, though, is technology should not be done just for the sake of innovation. You need to solve a problem. So it's very important that entrepreneurs who are looking at this problem should immerse themselves in a healthcare environment to understand and see, come on rounds with myself, Dr. Kaul, Dr. Panigrahi, and see what they do during a day, and evaluate what is the challenges that physicians face, and you'll have a better understanding of what we're actually dealing with. Now, compliance is actually not natural. It is not normal for us to stick to the speed limit. It is not normal for us to stop at the red and wait at the orange and go at the green. Why do patients ignore advice? Because they're human beings. All of us, ignore advice. It's a question of trust. It's a question of cost. I do remote intensive care for the US. One of the most common patients I see are people in diabetic ketoacidosis. What is that? You don't take your insulin, your sugar shoots up, your blood becomes acidic, and then you end up with a whole bunch of metabolic problems. Why? Because they didn't take their insulin. Why didn't they take insulin? Because they couldn't afford it. It's $11 for a dose. And if you really look at that kind of a huge gap between what can be done even in a developed economy and actually what is happening, just imagine the scale at which the world is actually not solving simple problems. Take malaria, dengue. Mosquitoes kill 800,000 people a year, die because of mosquitoes. And if you look at the compliance factor there, that's about a systemic compliance issue where people are either having standing water or not, taking care of their environment. So these are just examples of where compliance plays a role, and it's not just medication. It's about understanding also. So when I give a patient an inhaler, you can see an inhaler here, even if you do it perfectly, only 10% of the drug gets into the lungs. And the reason inhalers are good, which I explained to a lot of patients, very many people are worried about steroids, for example, because the dose is really tiny. So when you have a little canister like this, you shake it, the liquid becomes a gas. When you push it, it goes out, but you have to do it in a correct way. So I explained to them that use a spacer, put it in your mouth, press it, take a deep breath, etc. So those are things which affect people with compliance. Talk about the mask. If you wear a mask, just compliance, you actually prevent disease. So these are just examples of where we generally tend to avoid, following guidance. The question about faith is very important, and other speakers have brought it up. Trust in a provider, trust in a system is very important. People may go to alternative systems of medicines or complementary systems of medicine because they have a trust factor there where they think that would work better. And of course, a lot of times, if you don't treat something, it goes away many times. And then the patient gets reinforced into this concept that they don't need the medication. Whereas if you take somebody with, say, asthma, possibly it'll get better, but newer and newer data says that if you don't treat it, you might end up with long-term lung fibrotic changes in the airways. So these are some factors which patients may not be aware of. There are certain conditions. When I do intensive care, there are some life-threatening issues where, say you have somebody who does not want a blood transfusion. If it is for a religious reason, we may be forced to follow it. However, if it is someone who just doesn't want blood or doesn't want to take a medication, which can be harmful for them, there are situations where you can kind of put them under a psychiatric hold and tell them that, this is not a correct situation. This is threatening your life. There are situations of extreme physiology, say somebody with a very low heart rate, a very high heart rate, where you may not be able to wait for the compliance and the non-compliance can kill. Extremes of age, people with mental issues, dementia, delirium, and also the very young may not be able to actually take decisions on their own. And in those situations, compliance may need to be enforced. How do you encourage compliance? There are many tips and tricks. Now, when you're talking to a patient, apparently, time is a very relative factor. If you actually sit down and talk to a patient with eye-level contact, apparently 3 minutes will feel like a much longer time. And there is good data suggesting that you should actually do that. Listening, and for the first 90 seconds when a patient comes in, not interrupting them for 90 seconds, that's it, a minute and a half, actually solves a lot of problems and might actually help you make a diagnosis faster. And of course, there's a concept of negotiation where if you want a patient to do 5 things, start with 1. And that's a problem I myself have, where I kind of want to fix the problem for the patient. And I sometimes find myself stopping myself, sometimes not stopping myself, where I need to tell the patient, do these 1, 2, 3 things, and let's check up in a week or so what to do next. So these are some tips and tricks that you might want to do. Now, technology can fill many gaps, so you can simplify things. You can ensure that there is clarity in instruction. You can also automate several of these processes. Medications that need to be refilled, let the system automatically generate a reminder to the pharmacy to get the medications auto-couriered to the patient's home, or a pickup happens. We have Swiggy, we have Zomato, we have all these food apps which are constantly barraging you saying, hey, it's lunchtime. Do you want to go pick that food up you ordered last time? And I've gained several kilos just because of those notifications, because I'm hungry. The app's telling me to order some food. It must be a good thing. There are, of course, augmented prescriptions. Augmented prescriptions are where the prescription also tells you to check a potassium level if you're on a medicine that's going to dilute your blood, or if you're going to have, losing urine and you're going to lose weight because of that, you want to check your weight every day. There can be a reminder for that. There can also be biologic parameter feedback loops where a insulin dosing system is auto-controlled by the glucose level. And these are things which are already existing, but there are multiple other areas where compliance plays a role. And it's not just at the outpatient level. In the inpatient level, there are many systems that are required where health providers need to have compliance with certain systems where no shortcuts are taken, because healthcare, in my belief, is like aviation. And many people have looked at healthcare as aviation mainly for the safety factors, where you cannot have any things that are, you can't take any shortcuts, you can't skip any steps. What's next? What's coming up? Well, convenience, cost effectiveness, and of course, compassionate options, where you need to sometimes realize that patients just can't do what you're telling them to do. And then you have to negotiate and give up and say, you know what, they can't do it. So a lot of times I get very upset when I've given a patient an entire prescription neatly written out despite my handwriting, or typed it up, and I tell them, do this, let's catch up next week. They show up next week and they didn't touch a single pill. And I'm like, okay, why didn't you? Well, I was waiting for the test to come back, or well, my uncle told me not to do, etc. But a lot of times they did okay. So the other side of it is many of them did fine. But there are, of course, factors you may not know about. When you don't treat a condition, there may be bad effects on the human body which we don't know about right away. Telemedicine is one way to ensure compliance. You can actually talk to patients and do that remotely. Home care is an option where you send people home to actually help them take their medicines. You can have wearables which will alert. You can have the uni pill where, essentially you're taking 20 pills. Instead, you combine it into a single pill. And people have actually looked at this and studied this for non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension, hyperlipidemia, which often go together. And of course, there are alternate options to medication. Perhaps exercise is sufficient. And I like the point that someone had mentioned earlier about, I think Dr. Manas had mentioned that about knowing what the benefit was. So just like exercise improves your muscle strength and you actually measure it, likewise, you may need a feedback loop which tells you. Now, many of our phones and watches can now measure our steps. They can guide us and push us into compliance towards exercise, but there are several gaps that have not yet been filled. You may need to apply pressure diplomatically, and you may need solutions. There may be invisible persuasion where you tell a patient do something which will automatically lead them to do a second thing. There can be proxy persuasion. You tell the parent to tell their son. You may have placebo methods where you tell them, this is fine, whereas the actual factor is that the one treatment they're taking is actually helping them with the other treatment. You can take what I call the carrot, the stick, the cake, or the counseling model, where you kind of encourage them using behavioral techniques. And of course, there's contextual convincing. If I want someone to quit tobacco, I'm often telling them, okay, do you want to attend the wedding of your child in 7 years and be healthy? That's sometimes something they never thought of, and that kind of sticks to them. I often also give them financial examples of the cost of tobacco that they've been using. So these are just some examples of what you can do. Where what we call in the normal, we called it the new normal, we called it the next normal, and now it's just normal. We're all living with COVID. But for example, telehealth is a giant entity in our lives now. And I strongly feel that in the patient compliance arena, remote methods of ensuring compliance and encouraging compliance are definitely going to make a difference. So what I've touched on today is very similar to what the others have talked about, but what I would like to encourage all the listeners, and especially people trying to create solutions, we know it's a big problem. It's a problem all of us actually have. We're not compliant beings. So maybe we need to go through some factors. There's a book called The Atomic Habits, which talks about change and change in habits and behavior, where if you do a 1% positive change in a day, you actually end up with a situation where in the end of a year, you're almost like 300% better. Likewise, if you were to look at disease management and condition management, you may be able to actually look at methods where you can actually incorporate not just one change, but several changes. There's just a couple other points I wanted to make was use artificial intelligence, because AI is able to actually solve many of these problems. And it's important to realize that sometimes a micro change, even 2mm change in blood pressure, may help hypertension long-term outcomes. And you may not see it right away, but you may be able to get some biomarkers which will help you right away. So overall, what we've talked about today is about the fact that compliance is a real problem, and it's important that we should ensure this. So I'm going to stop there and thank you all. Let me just see if this comes through. Thank you all again, and hopefully we'll be able to have a more peaceful world in the near future. I'm going to end that and stop sharing. Thank you again, Ambuj and Sri Krishna, for inviting me for this.
Thank you very much for that, sir. It was really nice hearing with real life examples that you've given. We are a little late in terms of time, so we'll take the questions later. Now I would request Nakul Gupta. Can I have the slide, please, Kriti? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So he would talk about the startup perspective. So Nakul Gupta is the COO and the director at Everwell Health Solutions. So he is, Everwell Health Solutions is basically a startup which looks at specifically on patient compliance. He would talk more about that. I would briefly talk about Nakul. So he is the COO and director, and he's Forbes 30 under 30 awardee and is a strong technologist. He is, before joining Everwell, he has worked with Google and Microsoft, and he has a BE in computer science from BITS Pilani. Over to you, Nakul, please.
Thank you, Sri Krishna. I'll just share my slide screen.
Yeah, please.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, you may make it full screen, please.
Yeah, is it clear?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Sri Krishna. It was great to see all the wonderful talks. Since we are running out of time, I'll try to keep this concise. So these are the 3 topics I wanted to cover today. And Sri Krishna, please interrupt me if there are any problems in my audio or video. So I'll give a quick overview of AOL's journey over the years. And then I'll talk about some of the work which we have done in patient adherence over the years. This work is inspired by a lot of the similar philosophies that have already been mentioned in the talk so far, especially in the last talk, Dr. Paul's talk. I think we associate and believe in some of the same grounding principles around all our work. And lastly, I think we can do some Q&A and discussion on opportunities ahead. So very quickly, I think AOL is a young organization, not so young now. I think it's around 7 years old. So our mission is to deploy user-centered digital platforms and innovations for healthcare programs across the world. The AOL Hub is our integrated platform for a variety of things. This is primarily an open source platform which is designed for patient management with a particular focus on adherence, as well as a variety of other things which we have added over the years. This supports primarily public health programs across the globe. So yeah, very quickly, some numbers on the platform and the overall innovations which we have currently supported. So this platform is also deployed in India, for instance. One of the largest deployments is in India's TB program. So we are a technical partner with the government of India to support the Niche platform, which is running nationally. With that, plus deployments in 14 other countries across 5 diseases, we have done a work at significant scale. So as of today, 1 of every 4 TB patients globally are registered on the AOL Hub platform. Currently, we manage more than 20 million patients, TB patients on the platform. There are more than 100,000 staff which are using the platform daily. There's a large number of DBT benefits which are going through the platform. This platform supports TB, but it also has deployments in HIV, mental health, maternal health. And recently, we have also done work in COVID, which is not specifically on patient management, but more around symptom tracking as well as oxygen management. Very quickly, these are the sites where we are active. India, of course, has one of the largest deployments both for TB and HIV, but we also have deployments across Southeast Asia and Africa. We have primarily focused intentionally on low and middle income countries rather than high income countries, because I think that's where we feel we can have the most amount of impact. We've been grateful to have a large number of partners. We were fortunate to be incubated within Microsoft Research. When we started in 2015 and 16, we also won several ITP awards, both for work in India and Myanmar. So I think thanks to Sri Krishna and team for supporting all of our growth over the last few years. And of course, there are a large number of NGOs, ministries, philanthropic organizations we partner with. For instance, the work in India is supported primarily by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I'll quickly come on to the work which we have done on the adherence space with a focus on TB for this particular conversation, because that's been brought up before. So this is just a summary of the work which we have done over the years. And as you can follow the arrow, I think basically what I'm trying to say is that the work has evolved over the years. When in 2014 and 15, when we started, then DOTS was very prevalent in TB. So smartphone penetration, feature phone penetration was very low. And people were required to come to government centers to make sure that they are taking their pills on time. That required a lot. That got high compliance, but it required a lot of effort for both patients as well as staff. To reduce some of those challenges and to still make sure that we have high adherence and highly accurate adherence, we came up with a solution called 99 dots, which was something very simple, very straightforward. It required only paper and required feature phones, no smartphones. And we have deployed that for around 3 lakh patients in India and another few lakh patients across the globe. Over the years, we have also added other technology like smart boxes, and there are a few other technologies which we have supported. In the last 2 or 3 years, as smartphone penetration has boomed in India and technology readiness has also increased, we have also embraced the smartphone audience and have technology solutions which cater to all of those. So in total, my point is that no solution fits all. And for a country as diverse as India and other LMICs, it's important to have different solutions in your kitty and make sure that patients choose a solution which is best for them. And programs deliver those solutions which can ensure maximum compliance. So I think the trend over from this direction to this direction is around increase in patient friendliness and increase in technology readiness. So what I'll do now is I'll describe a few of these technologies and then we can pause for questions. So very quickly, this was our first innovation on 99 dots, which was a very simple technology. As you can see, these are tuberculosis medications. This is paper envelope. You put the medication in envelopes, and whenever a patient pops a pill, he or she sees a phone number. You see the phone number, you place a call on that phone number, and if the patient calls on that day, the date turns green. If he or she doesn't, then it remains as red. This website and dashboard is visible, and mobile app is visible to healthcare staff so that they can track their patients. Patients just need a feature phone, and they don't even need any balance, because the number which we show over here is a toll-free number. The slight trick over here is that the numbers which you see follow a pattern. It's a de Bruijn sequence. So based on the prior numbers which are called, we can predict the right number which the patient has to call next. Based on this prediction, we can give some more guarantees whether the patient had the right pill in his hand, in his or her hand or not. So of course, like in previous talks which we discussed, we cannot ensure that the patient took the pill, ingested the pill, but we can still ensure that the patient popped the pill. So that's what we were aspiring for over here. Second was, I think, for a certain complicated disease regimens such as DRTB, we tried out electronic pill boxes, which is basically medication placed in pill boxes. And whenever you open and close the lid, there's a small modem over here with a magnetic chip, which detects when the box is opened or closed. This then has a SIM card which sends a signal to our server. So basically, you see the same calendar as you see over here, reporting adherence. The third is for smartphone-based reporting. For those patients who have smartphone access, we are also exploring patient-facing applications as well as chatbots, so that instead of relying on physical boxes or envelopes, some patients can also gradually transition to smartphone-based engagement methodologies. We have a deployment of this application for India's TB program, which has significant number of downloads over the last few years. So yeah, these were the three technologies I wanted to talk about. To sum up, I think the trend I see is towards increasing patient friendliness and increasing technology readiness as smartphone penetration increases in India, as internet penetration increases in India, as well as patient education. I think the trend I see is that we should explore and innovate more on technology solutions which help make things easier for the patient and are more patient-centric than they were before. Shri Krishna, if you have time, I have some case studies, but maybe we can skip those in the interest of time and we can do questions.
I think we have already passed 5. So I think you have already given enough information or enough ideas for sure, and you have showed the way how Everwell has evolved over the years. So I think that itself is enough thoughts for the budding entrepreneurs. So I think I'll request you to stop here, and I think we'll take a couple of questions. I know it is past 5, but just I'll start with you yourself. So one specific question that we have for you is, what are the main challenges that Everwell faced in scaling up innovation? I know you've done it in 17 odd countries. So what were some of the challenges that you faced in scaling up?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge, of course, is making sure that there is a strong product market fit in whatever innovation you have. So I think for 99 dots, for instance, we spent a couple of years perfecting the solution on the field, not just sitting in a laboratory, not just sitting in our Microsoft offices, but spending a large amount of time on the field. So we had small pilots in Bihar as well as in Karnataka to see with our own eyes on how people are using these technologies. So I think first challenge in my mind is to making sure that there is a real product market fit, and we understand what are the actual challenges people face before we try to scale it up. The second piece is, I think, relying on the human aspect of things. Like I think this has been mentioned in Dr. Kaul's talk as well, that technology is just an enabler. It's not a replacement for human intent. So all our technology innovations have been made with that intent in mind, that technology just augments human impact. It doesn't replace human impact. And thirdly, I think a strong focus on partnerships. So we've been grateful, for instance, to partner with the Government of India, which has supported us, which has helped us deploy these solutions in collaboration with them. We have been grateful to partner with the World Health Organization, with a large number of funders such as the Gates Foundation, USAID, NGOs. So I think a strong network of partnerships and on the ground partners has been crucial. So yeah, these three things: product market fit, partnerships, and phrasing technology as augmentation rather than replacement.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I have a question from Sonali Roy, which says, what would be the role of the Prime Minister's Jan Aushadhi Yojana to reduce the cost of medication? I think this question was towards Dr. Subhash Kaul. He spoke about the costing of the medicines. I think he's not there. May I request Dr. Manas to take up this question? Sir, are you there? The role of Jan Aushadhi Yojana of the Prime Minister of the government. Dr. Manas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Sir.
Yeah, it's about the generic medicine, is it not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I think the question is on generic medicines, the usage and the effectiveness and all that. Yeah, your advice on that, sir. Yeah.
I mean, the concept is good. It significantly reduces the cost of treatment. But then the methodology or implementation is something it is not so easy because the generic medicine a pharmacist has to provide, and then we do not. Who is going to tell the biological availability or the efficacy of the generic medicine? And if it doesn't work, who is liable for that? Is it the government or the pharmacist? All these days, anything happened, it was on the doctors. So, the government has told Jan Aushadhi, but he has not told from where they're obtaining the generic medicine and what is the authenticity of that. And then, so here, so that is, if that is taken care, then Jan Aushadhi will work very well. The source of generic medicine and the authenticity has to be taken care.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, sir. I think in the interest of time, I'll stop here. There were one or two other questions, but I'll stop here and we can take those questions offline. So I would thank all the speakers and all the audience who attended the program. Thank you very much. And just before we end, I would just like to highlight that there is one more webinar on the 10th of March, which is on data-driven modeling to enable pharma, biopharma research, development, and innovation. So I would urge all the participants, the prospective applicants to attend that webinar as well. Thank you everyone. Thank you IKP team, and thank you all the speakers for being here with us today. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Ambos. Thank you, Dr. Ambos. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being there, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ranjit sir. Ranjit sir.
I think Dr. Manas is still there.
Yes.
Yeah,
no, I just wanted to say that it was very nice, excellent. The KIMS team,
absolutely.
everything was.
Yeah.
Thanks to Ranjit sir. Actually, Dr. Manas, when he spoke about the Fiji, actually Fiji team put the video with, a full thing in a 1 minute time.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
He brought up, everybody was good.
Exceptionally good. Yeah. It was all very well.
Insurance thing was something which was, I felt was unique. And the value, Dr. Kaul spoke about the value the patient has to recognize. And of course, the friendly, the